A lone prisoner died in the Bastille, his face forever hidden by a mask. This is the true story of the man in the Iron Mask, one of history's most enduring and bizarre puzzles. For over 300 years, his identity has been a complete secret, a mystery locked away by the absolute command of France's most powerful king, Louis XIV. This was not a common criminal, but a man of such potential importance that an entire nation's stability might have depended on his silence. By the end of this, you will understand every compelling theory behind the mask and decide for yourself which one holds the key. We will examine a secret royal twin, a disgraced valet who knew too much, and the wild possibilities that keep historians guessing. What does it take for a person to vanish from history without a trace? The mystery begins not with a legend, but with a paper trail. Official records and private letters give us the only solid facts we have. In the summer of 1669, the Minister of War for King Louis XIV, the Marquis de Louvois, sent a secret order to the governor of the Pignerol fortress. He was to expect a new prisoner, a man known only by the pseudonym Eustache Dodger. The instructions were chillingly specific. Dodger was to be held in a cell with multiple doors, one inside the other, to prevent anyone outside from hearing his voice. He could be provided with basic linen and other small comforts, but under one non-negotiable condition. He must never, under any circumstances, remove the mask that covered his face. And if he ever spoke a word about his own identity, the governor was to kill him immediately. This was the birth of the secret. For the next 34 years, this masked man existed in a silent, shifting purgatory. He followed his jailer, Bénin d'Auvergne de Saint-Mars, from prison to prison like a ghost. From Pignerol, they moved to the fortress of Exils, then to the island prison of Sainte Marguerite off the coast of Cannes. Finally, in 1698, Saint-Mars was promoted to governor of the most famous prison in France, the Bastille in Paris, and he brought his most precious charge with him. It was here, on November 19, 1703, that the prisoner died and was buried under a false name. His cell, his clothing, and every single item he ever touched were immediately burned. The walls of his room were scraped and whitewashed, as if to erase even the memory of his presence. This systematic obliteration tells us one thing for certain. The French state was terrified of what, or who he might represent. Now about that mask. The popular image of a clanging, hinged iron contraption is almost certainly wrong. The correspondence of Saint-Mars repeatedly refers to it as a mask of black velvet. Historians believe it was likely a kind of stiffened velvet hood with eye holes, held in place by laces or straps. For a prisoner meant to be kept alive and relatively healthy, a heavy iron mask would have been impractical, even cruel in a way that served no purpose. The velvet mask achieved the same goal. It rendered the man beneath it faceless, untraceable, a living blank. His captivity, while isolated, was not one of squalor. He was fed decently, allowed massages for his ailments, and even provided with a lute, but these comforts were not kindness. They were investments in silence. A dead prisoner tells no tales, but a comfortable, isolated, and utterly anonymous one might just live forever without ever speaking a word. So who told the world about him? For decades, the prisoner was a state secret known only to a handful of officials. The man who broke the story and ignited the legend was the famous philosopher Voltaire. While he was himself imprisoned in the Bastille in the 1720s, nearly 2 decades after the masked man's death, Voltaire heard the whispers from the old guards. He wrote about the enigmatic prisoner in his historical works, and he made 2 crucial, sensational claims. First, he said the mask was made of iron. Second, and far more importantly, he declared the prisoner was the older, illegitimate brother of Louis XIV. Voltaire had a flair for drama and a deep hatred for absolute monarchy, so his account must be read with caution. But he placed the idea into the public mind that this was no ordinary man. He was someone whose very face could shake a kingdom. With these sparse facts and this explosive suggestion, the hunt for the prisoner's true identity truly began. Voltaire's suggestion of a royal sibling did not emerge from thin air. It points directly to the theory that has captivated imaginations for centuries, the idea that the man in the mask was the secret, illegitimate older twin brother of Louis XIV. Think of the sheer, destabilizing power of that secret. In an era where divine right and bloodline were everything, a twin brother, especially an older one, would not be a mere curiosity. He would be a living, breathing crisis. According to royal succession laws known as Salic law, the firstborn son inherits the throne. If there were twins, the one born mere minutes earlier would be the rightful king. The entire glorious reign of the Sun King, all his wars, his palaces, his very identity as God's chosen ruler, would instantly transform into a monumental fraud. The prisoner's exceptionally careful treatment starts to make a sinister kind of sense under this theory. He wasn't just hidden, he was preserved. Killing him would be a mortal sin and risk the secret leaking through a confessor or executioner. But keeping him alive, healthy, and utterly anonymous in a velvet mask ensured the problem remained contained, a silent threat locked away in a series of stone boxes. Proponents of this theory point to the prisoner's dignified demeanor noted by those few who glimpsed him, and the fact that the governor, St. Mars, treated him with a strange, fearful respect, serving his meals himself. This, they argue, is how you treat a man of supreme royal blood, not a common criminal. Yet for all its dramatic appeal, the twin theory faces monumental historical obstacles. The first and most glaring is the complete absence of any record. The birth of Louis XIV in 1638 was a major state event, witnessed by a crowd of nobles and documented in meticulous detail. There is no mention of a second child, no hint of complication. For a queen to give birth to a twin in the 17th century, and for that fact to be perfectly erased from every diary, letter, and official report, is a conspiracy of staggering scale and silence. Furthermore, the logistics are baffling. What would they have done with the infant, who would have raised him in total secrecy, only to have him emerge decades later as a prisoner? The timeline is also problematic. If this twin was a direct threat to Louis's throne, why was he only imprisoned in 1669, when the king was already 31 years old and firmly in power? A rival claimant would have been most dangerous in the king's childhood. The counterargument suggests perhaps the twin was discovered later, or that he was not a legitimate twin, but an illegitimate half-brother, a son of Louis XIII born from a scandalous affair. This version softens the legal threat, but retains the core idea of a dangerous blood relative. Even so, the same questions of evidence and motive remain. The twin theory is a story of Shakespearean scale, a hidden heir and a stolen crown. It satisfies our desire for the mystery to be as grand as its consequences. But it requires us to believe in a historical magic trick, the complete vanishing of a royal birth. The truth may be just as shocking, yet far more human. What if the man behind the mask was not a prince, but a servant who knew a prince's most devastating secret? But if the prisoner was not a hidden king, perhaps he was a ruined noble. This leads us to the second major category of suspects, men who fell from the highest ranks of Louis XIV's court. Their crime was not their birth, but their actions, and their punishment was a living death designed to erase their disgrace from public memory. The first candidate is General Vivien de Bulland. In 1691, during the 9 Years' War, Bulland was commanding French forces besieging the town of Cuneo in northern Italy. With rumors of an approaching enemy relief force, he panicked. In the dead of night, he ordered a chaotic, humiliating retreat, abandoning his artillery, supplies, and wounded men in the mud. When King Louis learned of this cowardice, he was furious. He wrote a famous, scathing letter to his war minister. The king demanded that Bulland be arrested, and that his name be inscribed on every army bulletin as a man who had disgraced himself through sheer lack of courage. The timing is compelling. Bulland disappears from records after this incident, and the masked prisoner was very much alive in St. Mars's custody at the time. The theory suggests that for a general to be publicly tried and executed would cast a shadow on the entire army and the king's leadership. Instead, he was vanished, his face hidden so that even his jailers would not know they guarded a man who had failed the Sun King so profoundly. Yet this theory, while logical, has a flaw. Bulland's disgrace was already public knowledge because of the king's own order to post his name. What purpose would a mask serve if everyone already knew what he had done? His punishment could have been a life sentence in a remote fortress without the theatrical addition of the velvet hood. This brings us to the second, and far more documented, suspect, the man named in the original prison documents, Eustache Dodger. For a long time, Dodger was just a name on a page. Then historians found him. He was not a general, but a valet, a servant, but he was no ordinary servant. He worked for a man named Nicolas Fouquet, the immensely wealthy superintendent of finances for Louis XIV. Fouquet lived like a king himself, and his outrageous spending sparked the king's jealousy. In 1661, Louis had Fouquet arrested for embezzlement. The trial was the scandal of the century, and here is where Eustache Dodger enters the shadows. As Fouquet's valet, Dodger would have been privy to every secret, every clandestine meeting, every piece of hidden correspondence that passed through his master's hands. He may have known secrets that could implicate other powerful nobles, or even dark truths about the king's own family. When Fouquet was sentenced to life imprisonment, the king could not risk letting his talkative servant roam free. So Dodger was given his own life sentence, with one extra, terrifying condition. He must never be seen or heard. The mask was not to hide his identity from the world, but to prevent him from communicating his secrets to anyone, even other prisoners. This theory fits the facts neatly. The dates align perfectly with Dodger's arrest and the first orders from the Minister of War. The instructions to kill him if he speaks of his past directly point to a man holding dangerous information, not a man of royal blood. And his treatment, while strict, was that of a high-value informant, not a revered prince. St. Mars likely served him meals himself not out of respect, but to ensure no other guard ever got close enough to hear a whispered confession. Yet the question remains, does it fit the legend? Could the prisoner who inspired 3 centuries of speculation really have been a servant who knew too much? It feels almost anticlimactic, but consider the absolute power of Louis XIV. To him, a valet who held secrets that could destabilize his reign was every bit as dangerous as a twin brother. The mask was the ultimate symbol of control. It said, "You are nothing, your face is nothing, your voice is nothing. The secrets you carry will die with you, unseen and unheard." So we have 2 compelling possibilities from the world of the court, a shamed general and a silent valet. Both are grounded in historical record far more than the royal twin theory. But the mystery has one more layer, a realm of speculation where the theories become truly wild and strangely persuasive. But the human imagination is never satisfied with just 2 options. When history leaves a gap, we rush to fill it with stories even more incredible than the truth. Beyond the twin and the valet lies a whole gallery of wildcard suspects, each more dramatic than the last. Some have suggested the masked man was not Louis XIV's brother, but his true biological father. The theory goes that the king's official father, Louis XIII, was unable to have children, and that the prime minister, Cardinal Richelieu, arranged for a handsome, anonymous substitute to ensure an heir. The masked prisoner, then, would be that stand-in father, hidden away once his service was complete to prevent any challenge to the royal bloodline's purity. It is a plot fit for a scandalous novel, but it crumbles under the same weight as the twin theory, a complete lack of contemporary evidence from a court dripping with gossip. Others have whispered that he was a secret lover of the Queen Mother, Anne of Austria, or perhaps even of Louis XIV himself, imprisoned to hide a forbidden romance. Another popular candidate is an Italian count named Ercole Antonio Mattioli. He was a diplomat who double-crossed Louis XIV in a secret deal to purchase a strategic fortress, and for his betrayal, he was thrown into Pignerol prison in 1679. We know Mattioli was a real prisoner there, and his disappearance was absolute. But the dates do not match perfectly, and more importantly, the original orders for the masked prisoner, Eustache Dodger, were issued a full decade before Mattioli's arrest. He seems to be a different man, another soul swallowed by the same prison system, whose story later got tangled up in the greater legend. This swirl of speculation shows us something vital. The man in the iron mask is not just a historical question, he is a blank screen. We project onto him our deepest fascinations with power, betrayal, and hidden truth. He becomes whoever we need him to be, a mirror for our own curiosity. So have modern tools allowed us to finally see the face behind that mirror? In recent decades, historians and scientists have tried. They have combed through the Bastille's fragmented burial records, searching for the grave listed under the false name Marchielli. They have subjected the original, cryptic death certificate to linguistic and forensic analysis, looking for coded meanings or clues in the handwriting. These investigations are meticulous, but they keep running into the same brick wall the French state built 300 years ago. Every document related to the prisoner was either deliberately destroyed or written in such vague, guarded language that it reveals nothing. The death certificate itself is a masterpiece of obscurity. It lists the prisoner's name as the false one, gives his age as about 45, which does not match any major suspect perfectly, and states he died suddenly. That is all. It is a door that leads nowhere. This is the core of the mystery's enduring power. We live in an age of satellites and DNA, where we believe every secret can be uncovered. Yet here is a secret that technology cannot crack, because the evidence was annihilated with ruthless efficiency. We are left with a haunting silhouette. We know how he was treated, we know the fear he inspired in his jailers, but we cannot know who he was, and perhaps that is the point. The ultimate power of Louis XIV was not just to imprison a man, but to erase him so completely that his identity became a playground for legend. The prisoner achieved in death what was forced upon him in life. He became eternally faceless, a permanent question mark in the history books. So where does this leave us? With all these theories laid out, from the sublime to the mundane, is there a way to finally weigh them and decide which one holds the most weight? 300 years of investigation leave us with a few unshakable facts and a whirlwind of possibility. We know a man existed, hidden behind a mask of black velvet, moved between fortresses for 34 years under the absolute secrecy of King Louis XIV's command. We know his identity was so dangerous that upon his death, every trace of him was burned and scraped away. The rest is a puzzle we are still trying to solve. The royal twin theory offers a story of epic, Shakespearean scale, a hidden king whose face threatened the very foundation of the Sun King's glory. It speaks to our love of grand, hidden legacies. The case for Eustache Dodger, the disgraced valet, is quieter but perhaps more chilling, a tale of a servant who knew too much and was silenced not with a blade, but with a lifetime of anonymous oblivion. It feels historically solid, a testament to the paranoia of absolute power, and the wilder theories, from secret fathers to double-crossing counts, show how this mystery has become a canvas for our own fascination with the shadows of history. But perhaps the true identity of the man in the mask is less important than what his story represents. In an era of absolute monarchy, where a king's word was law, this prisoner is the ultimate symbol of that power's dark extreme. It was the power to not just punish a person, but to unmake them, to erase a human face from the world, to reduce a life to a single, guarded secret. That is what continues to haunt us. It is the starkest reminder of how completely a person can vanish when the state decides they must. We are left staring at a locked door from the 17th century, and no key has ever been found. So now, the question passes to you. Looking at all the evidence and the legends, who do you believe was behind that velvet mask? Was it the lost twin brother, the silenced valet, or someone else entirely? Cast your vote in the comments below, and let's see which theory holds the most weight with this community. If you found yourself pulled into this historical enigma, subscribe for more deep dives into the greatest unsolved puzzles our past has to offer.